Math Module 1, Lesson 3. I can use exponents to name place value units and explain patterns in the placement of the decimal. So make sure what I do in the video, you're doing on your concept development pages in your workbook. So just like the I can statement said, we're going to learn about exponents. So we're going to start in the tens box right below it. So I need to be thinking 10 times what gets me 10? Because that's what I need to figure out. 10 times what equals 10? Well, 10 times 1. So then I need to go to the 100. 10 times what gets me 100? Well, we went over that on Monday. 10. So now this is where it gets tricky. 10 times what gets me 1,000. So think about how many zeros are there in 1,000. Well, it has to be 10 times 10 times 10. So let's think about 10,000. So I've got to figure out 10 times something times something times something. And yes, you need to start writing smaller. It's very difficult on an iPad. So look how many zeros are in 10,000. So the answer must be 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. So I'm multiplying 10 4 times. So now I want you to do the 100,000 by yourself, and also the 1,000,000. So click pause, and I want you to fill out the 100,000 and the 1,000,000. Tell me 10 times what is going to get me 100,000. 10 times what is going to get me 1,000,000. Hint, hint, hint. Look at the zeros. Here are the correct answers. Check them. Make sure for 100,000 you had 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. So you should have written 10 5 times. And for 1,000,000 you should have written 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. So you should have written 10 6 times. So now we're going to move on. So now we're talking about the exponents. So if we know the multiples of 10 that are going to get me my 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, and 1,000,000, the exponents are a piece of cake. So how many times, I'm going to always start with 10 for right now. How many times did I multiply 10? Well, I only multiplied 10 one time. So it's 10 to the 1 power because I'm multiplying 10 times 1. That's it. I'm multiplying 10 once. Now, how many times for 100? How many times did I multiply 10? 2 times. So 10 times 10 is 10 to the 2 power because I multiplied 10 twice. So for 1,000, it would be 10 to the 3rd power because I'm multiplying 10 3 times. Now, 10 times 10 times 10 is not. Let me write that down here so you know. It is not equal to 10 times 3. Because 10 times 3 is 30. And 10 times 10 times 10 is 1,000. And I don't know about you, but 1,000 is definitely not equal to 30. So you can't think of it as 10 times 3. You've got to think of it 10 3 times. So 10 times 10 times 10. So now I want you to figure out what would be the exponent for 10,000, 100,000, and 1,000,000. And we'll check in a moment. So click pause and solve for 10,000, 100,000, and 1,000,000. So for 10,000, our answer would be 10 to the 4th power because I multiplied 10 4 times. And for 100,000, it would be 10 to the 5th power. And then here's my other hint. It's because I see 5 zeros. So I'm multiplying 10 5 times. And then for a million, it's going to be 10 to the 6th power because I multiplied 10 6 times. And if you notice, there's 6 zeros. Please make sure anything you see in this chart, you better have written down on your paper so that when you're doing your homework, you've got something to refer back to. For your problem 2, we have 10 to the 5th power. So standard form would be like the number 100. So if I have 10 to the 5th power, it would be a 1 with 5 zeros. So that would be 100,000. If I'm doing the expanded form, I've got to show how many times I'm multiplying. So it's 10 times 10. How many times am I going to write 10? I wonder, what's that 5 tell me? Guess what? It tells me how many times I'm writing 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. And then exponential, I have to write 10 to what power? Hint, 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 they already gave it to you. Make sure that what I've written, you have written. Obviously, you don't have to write the 100 because that was just an example to help you with the standard form. So for problem number 3, I have 10 times 100. So I want you to write that as an exponent. So we're going to say 10 times 100 equals, so 10 to what power? So how many zeros do I see? Well, there's 1, 2, 3 zeros, so it must be 10 to the 3rd power. All of these problems are just exposing you to other ways of using exponents or how they may look different than a previous problem. Make sure what I've done, you've done. For problems 4 and 5, we're going to write without using an exponent. So I have 3 times 10 to the 2nd power, so I'm changing that 10 to the 2nd power. So it would be equal to 3 times what? Well, I know I'm going to start with a 1 because that's a pattern I've noticed. And then I've got to look at that exponent. So how many zeros am I going to write? 2. So it's 100. So 3 times 10 to the 2nd power is equal to 3 times 100. So 3 times 100 is, I know this is shocking, 300. So now let's look at the next problem. 3 4/10. So now we're getting that decimal in there that we've been focusing on, times 10 to the 3rd power. So I need to, number 1, write it without that exponent. So I'm going to say 3 4/10, which is what I know, times, so I know I start with a 1. And what's that exponent tell me? How many zeros do I need to have? 3. 1, 2, 3. I need my comma. So 3 4/10 times 1,000. So now this goes back to the previous lesson. So those 3 zeros tell me I need to move my decimal 3 places to the right. And these become zeros, those little divots. So I'm going to rewrite my number. The answer would be 3, 4, 0, 0, and then my decimals at the end. Don't forget my comma. So when I take 3 4/10 and I multiply by 1,000, I'm moving that decimal place 3 places to the right. And in those empty spaces, I got to put zeros. So my answer is 3,400. So this is going over what we learned yesterday about moving the decimal to the right when I multiply and move it to the left when I divide. The only thing that's new is the exponent piece. So notice that every lesson is building on the previous. So you can't check in and check out when you want. Got to be checked in the whole time.